Hey, Deanna.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. So I'm pretty sure we've got at least one other person. Whoa, look at my hair. Crazy town.
Ah,
I
I'm
reckon
looking
we've
at,
got at least
I'm looking at mine and they love shit. Yeah, they love Zoom.
Yeah, totally. That's how I feel. I just go like, it's like wearing a headband.
Should totally
So
make
I
a head.
think Emily's coming as well.
Mhm.
So we'll just give her a few minutes to find her way in. I'll just message
Sure.
her and see if she's close.
If she can't, I'm totally happy if you want to then change to another time.
No, we'll just
Or,
do it
make
anyway, and then we
sure.
can upload it. It's fine.
Yeah.
It just means we probably
Okay.
won't spend an hour, right? We'll just get
Yeah.
through it quicker than we would if there was a bunch of people in here.
Okay.
Totally fine.
Cool.
Uh, oops. Sorry, I'm trying to type really fast and it's not working.
It never does.
Like, okay. How you been?
How have I been?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Just haven't. Today's my voiceover day, today and tomorrow. So I feel like I haven't been able to give as much time to like as much practice as I've was in the first few weeks.
Yeah.
That's just happening. Like I've started doing community radio and
Ooh.
which is fun because I did a radio presenting course before this one. And then I went, well, next step will be just to get the practical skills then, not just the copywriting and that. So I've
Mm.
got a 2-hour program every Monday night. So I'm trying to plan that without it just being playing song after song and actually have little segments in between and bring in the stuff from that course. So
Yeah, nice.
that's been taking up a lot of time. And I'm going, no, I want to use Deanna's time as much as like to make the most of while I've got you to submit as much stuff. And
Yeah.
so that's, yeah, you'll probably get a couple of links from me posted this
Yeah,
afternoon.
that's fine. That's good. That's good. That's fine. They come in when they come in, you know?
Yeah,
Like it just is what it is.
yeah,
But it's great that you're doing other stuff as well, right? Because it all works together.
it does. It's all ties in.
Yeah.
Hey,
Like,
Emily.
hey
Hello.
Emily.
Sorry, I'm a little bit late.
No, don't stress. It's totally cool. I just wanted to make sure you were coming so we didn't start without you.
Oh, thanks.
So while you're getting settled, I'm just gonna open up. I've got a little PowerPoint to share. Computer's running like a bit of a bugger today though, so just doing real slow stuff. So have both of you warmed up? Are you warm?
I forgot this was happening and I looked and I was like, oh, 5-1. Oh, I might have, because there's one here now. It's this daylight savings I've got now. And I went, oh, I'll have lunch. Oh, I'll meditate. No, shit, class in
It's on
5 minutes.
now.
And I went down and I said, Mum, I was going to do a warm up and it's a breath control one and I haven't warmed up. So yeah, no's my short answer.
Yeah,
I've just been at the gym, so I haven't.
Yeah, you're like your body's warm, but your voice isn't. So that's
I did a
fine.
little bit of one this morning. I've been trying to every morning do a little one, and I've been trying to do that jaw stuff.
Yeah, cool.
And you know what? I've noticed I can move my jaw way more now.
Yeah.
You know when we did that first thing where you were like, push your jaw forward? I was like,
probably wouldn't have gotten much movement at all, right?
no. And I was like, oh dear, that's okay. And so what I've been doing is every morning, like when I wash my face,
Yeah.
I've been going like, okay, I'm just going to like massage my jaw and do like all the jaw stuff. And now I'm like, zit, and the whole thing
and it's like
moves.
really mobile and fluid, right?
Yeah.
And that makes an extraordinary amount of difference. Like it's amazing. Changes the quality of your voice, but it gives you way more control because when your jaw is tight, your tongue is tight, right? And when your jaw is locked up there, your tongue sits quite high. So if you can relax your jaw, you can also drop your tongue. Did you hear how much like more resonant my voice just got then?
Yeah.
Just from letting my jaw drop and letting my tongue relax and sit lower in the back of my mouth, right? It's amazing the difference it makes. It'll increase your dynamic range enormously, right? And you don't have to use that dynamic range, but having it is better than not. you know?
Yeah.
That's what all of this is about. All of this is about, the reason you work out where your limitations are is so that you can work out whether or not you can like increase the boundaries of those limitations, but also so that you know what you've got available to you, so that you can use it at will, rather than just accidentally finding yourself there one day and going, how did that even happen?
Yeah, I'm really interested in that thing of being able to choose. It's what you were sort of talking about with Linda, like rather than just doing the thing, even if you're really good at it, being able to have that choice about how you control it. Because I was thinking about this with singing as well. Like I have a really amazing singing teacher, and the thing about it is that he is so specific about every single technique and detail. And I'm like, right, so I'm not just going to sing because I happen to be able to carry a tune, but I can actually choose, okay, actually I want this little bit of tone, and it's now flowing into this voice work now that I'm doing this with you, is I'm like, okay, what if instead of like just reading it, I can actually go, oh, I need a bit more air, or I need a tiny bit more pitch, or I need a bit more depth, or I need, and then being able to adjust rather than just, hey, I happen to sound
like this.
Yay! Yeah. I've done a vocal warm-up and I sound like a real actor, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't want to go too far into extreme like control, and you don't want to overthink everything. And that's where I struggle the other way, because I know that I do overthink. So being able to find that kind of balance between technique, foundation, control over what you're doing, and then like flow, and I'm so interested in that dynamic.
Well, for me, that's where mastery lives.
Yes, yeah.
Like that's what mastery is. Mastery is knowing what all of your options are and getting to choose which ones you want to use, you know, and trying something on and going, oh, that wasn't actually what I thought it would be. What happens if I do this instead? And knowing what the levers are that you have to pull.
But then pulling them and not showing them.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, but that takes time, right? That's just, and that's the same as everything, you know, like when you learn how to tie your shoelaces, you have to concentrate on every little movement of the shoelaces. When you learn how to drive, it's really obvious that you're learning how to drive, because you're like, look at the gear stick, look at the clutch and accelerator, watch the steering wheel, look at my windows, check over, look at the gear stick, you know, you have to like make yourself look at all of the things, because you don't know how to manage them cohesively yet. But once you know how to drive and you put your 10,000 odd hours in and you've got lots of experience, you don't have to look at your hand when you change gears. You don't have to think about what your feet are doing when you're finding the clutch point.
Yeah, sometimes I surprise myself. I'm like, oh, I'm already in third. How did I?
That's happening.
When did I actually start this car? Anyway,
but that's it, right? Like that's exactly it. I put a post on my Instagram the other day. It's from a guy named James Clear, and he's really amazing. He's got this book called Atomic Habits, and he talks a lot about how you can make tiny little adjustments and how incrementally that makes big changes in your life, right? It's not about going, well, here's the thing that I want to change. I'm going to change it all now. It's about choosing little things and just change that on a daily basis. And the cumulative effect of that is quite enormous, right? And one of the things he talked about, and you can go look at it on my Instagram if you want, he shared a thing that says something about, I can't remember it exactly, but it's something about like in the beginning of learning a skill, I can't remember, hang on. I want to get this right. So I've got my phone in front of me and I'll tell you exactly what it is. Hang on. So here we are. So beginner equals ignorance, simplicity. Intermediate equals functional complexity, and advanced equals profound simplicity. And I expanded on that and talked about the fact that simplicity actually is the absence of conscious decision making. Doesn't mean decisions aren't being made. You just don't have to make them consciously. And now that's either because you've embedded a whole bunch of processes and your subconscious is taking care of it now because it's learned, right? Or you've you've eliminated a whole bunch of options because you now know that they're not actually options to get the thing that you want to get, right? So the thing about being in the intermediate space is you're aware of all of the options that are available to you, and you have to choose. And complexity comes from having to choose.
Yeah, at drama school, Dean Carey spoke about a similar thing: conscious competence.
Yeah.
Unconscious competence and all. Yeah, that was a similar kind of thing. And the have you read the book The Inner Game of Tennis?
No.
That talks about this whole like flow state thing, when you build the technique up to the point and then you can just play
inside of it.
Yeah, and it's really good. I'm not a tennis player, but it's good. That he rewrote it and kind of aimed it at musicians, but it's the same concept.
Yeah.
And I find it really interesting when you can build to that point. And I've experienced it once in flute playing and more times in acting. With flute playing, I'd worked so hard on this piece for my 8th grade. And then I remember playing it in the exam, and I was playing it. And then I suddenly thought, gee, this is the best I've ever played this piece. And then I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And it was because I was playing it the best because I was in that flow state, doing all of the right things, and then the consciousness. So sometimes like that consciousness comes in and it's not even to tell you you're bad. It was saying, it was giving me a compliment. It was like, good job. And then it was like, oh, now it's not as good because I've dropped
out of the instinctive flow. Yeah.
Which is like insane focus.
Yeah.
It's so interesting because it's like that thing of you've got to be careful not to mix it up and just, don't do the work, because you have to have the foundation and the technique. And then I think some people get that kind of wrong and then they go, oh, just do it, just get up and do it. You don't need to learn all that stuff. You just have to just
feel
do it. Yeah. And it's like, no, actually you need to know all the things in order to find that mastery. And then anyway, sorry, I know this isn't the theme, but I'm
totally fine. It's
fascinated
really good
by it.
Yeah, it's really, really valuable because breath control, it all ties in anyway. So
yes,
the reason we're still having this conversation is completely functional in the space that we're talking about right now. And just to add something onto that, I'm a rock climber, right? And there's a lot of conversation around flow in climbing because the moment you introduce resistance to climbing, everything gets hard and you recognize your own weight and you hold on harder with your hands, and that creates tension and stops movement happening in a really fluid kind of way. And so, and the other thing about climbing is it's fucking scary. Like there's scary moments in it. It's not always scary, but when you're lead climbing, which is where you clip in your rope as you go, so you're regularly above your last point of contact with the wall. So if you fall, you're going to drop down to here, which is just the way it is, right? But it's scary. Your brain goes, ah, right? And so there's a whole pile of, if you let the fear manage you, you drop out of flow really, really, really quickly. And that is no different to, oh, I'm playing this piece quite nicely, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, I'm above my cliff, drops you out of flow. Or, wow, I'm really nailing this climb, drops you out of flow, right? It's all ego though. Whether it's saying nice things to you or scaring the shit out of you, it's still your ego talking. And ego is what drops you out of flow every single time. That separateness, watching what you're doing, when you're in flow, you're not conscious of that separate observation kind of thing. You're in it.
Yeah. And it's different as well to automatic pilot. Because sometimes if you go into automatic pilot, you're not actually as focused. You're just
not in it.
Going through the motions. So it's like finding that sweet spot of being able to
trust the processes.
Yeah.
And be thoroughly engaged with the process at the same time.
Yeah. Like the amount of focus that you need to keep going. Yeah. It's really interesting. I love it. And I love finding different ways to keep working on it and applying it, because I do boxing as well.
Cool.
And we've recently discovered that you have to be in that place when you're boxing, because if you don't, you'll get hit, but also you'll lose the flow of what we're doing. So she'll call out combinations and you.
Oh, totally.
And I realized the other day that you can't think about anything else. You have to stay in the moment of what you're doing, but listen, respond, and breath. It's so interesting because of all this as well. She was like, okay, here's how to breathe while you're doing it. And I realized that if I just focus on my breath, then everything else follows and my body listens, and I'm like, oh, and it all like links in. Anyway, I'm having some like light bulb moments in my life.
It's awesome. It's so good. But do you know what? This happens with every group that I take through this process of the boot camp thing, right? They're like, oh shit, this isn't just about voiceover. Like this is applicable like in all sorts of different places, because what we're talking about are fundamental physiological processes that you have to become aware of so that you can control them, right? Talking is just a thing that we do. Breathing is just a thing that we do, right? But when you want to exert control over how you breathe and how you talk, then you have to be very aware of all of the processes that are involved, which they're things that normally happen on autopilot, right? It's not like we've developed mastery of breathing, right? To get to 45 years old and being able to breathe. I didn't have to like learn how to breathe. My body already knows how to do that. So it happens on autopilot. Same with speaking. Like we have to learn language, but making sounds, the second we pop out of our mum's bits, we're like, rah, right? We're making noise, you know? So making noise and breathing are just integral parts of our physiology. But if we want to have mastery over these things that happen on autopilot, we have to break down all of the bits and pieces of them and look at them and pull them apart and go, what happens when I pull this lever and press this button and yoink on this, and what impact does that have, so that we can then build conscious mastery of something that we do unconsciously, which is a really interesting process. And because they're just normal things that we do every day, they show up in all the different parts of our life. It's not just, oh, when I'm doing voiceover, this is important. It actually, it's useful everywhere.
Yeah, and then it applies in that way of like finding your natural voice when you're doing voiceover, so you're not like, I'm dropping into this weird voiceover voice. Instead, you're using your own voice and then applying these things. That kind of then, for some reason, my brain linked that into that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
good.
Thank you for indulging that conversation, because that's so interesting.
Yeah. Have you got anything you want to say around that, Mark? Because we just both went.
I was just doing a lot of nodding. I was warming up my neck. So just that light little gentle head balancing on the spine, you know?
Yeah. Have I talked to you guys about the concept of your spine is a column of water and your head is a ping pong ball sitting on top of that column of water?
Yeah, you said it on Monday, and I was using it in my exercise the other day. I'm like, my ping pong ball.
Yeah. So Friday, peeps, I will take you through that the following Friday, because this Friday you get to see you're with Nick. I've had to make some changes into the thing a little bit because Nick's going on paternity leave. Nick is the engineer / voiceover artist that works in a studio here in Perth. So the Monday guys will see him next Monday. You'll see him on Friday, and then next Friday you'll get the class that Monday had this week.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Do we have, there's no different kind of preparation thing that we need to do?
None whatsoever.
Cool.
We won't be doing that much reading. We'll be just chatting lots and talking about studios and engineers and how to function and operational stuff and all that kind of thing. So just bring questions.
Cool.
But I'll let you guys know before Friday anyway.
Lovely.
All right. So I'm going to share my screen.
What was the name of the author of the Atomic Habits book?
James Clear.
James Clear. Thank you.
No worries. Come on. Pop into slideshow. Let's go.
Why do we need to control our breath?
Come on. Here we go. All right. So there's big differences, as we've discussed, between talking and I've got speaking / singing, because all of this stuff applies to singing just as much as it does to speaking. And you'll be starting to get an idea by now, I suspect, that voiceover is a lot like music. It's a lot like singing, and it's got rhythm and musicality that our general talking doesn't really require, you know, but we have to pay attention to rhythm and movement and cadence and that kind of stuff when we're speaking as opposed to talking, right? And it's very much like singing in that space, okay? So there's big differences, and Emily, you'll be familiar with all of these because you do a lot of singing, right? So when you're speaking instead of talking, your exhale length increases enormously. When we just talk, because we're breathing reactively instead of proactively, right? We just breathe when we need to, and we exhale for as long as we have air for, and then we take another breath. And sometimes we'll take a couple of really quick breaths in a sentence, and other times we'll take a big breath. But the only time we take a big breath when we're talking is when we've talked for ages and not taken a breath. Does that make sense? But when we're speaking deliberately and consciously, we take a breath, and then our exhale length increases enormously. And we use the exhale as our power generator and the thing that we speak on, okay? The other thing is the exertion of the exhale changes, okay? It becomes deliberate and it becomes consciously steady, and you want it to be fairly even. And the reason you want that evenness is so that you can increase or decrease the flow simply, right? If you haven't got a steady outflow of breath, if you just talk all your breath out like this, then you don't really have the opportunity to change how you exert that exhale throughout the whole exhale.
And that then goes into the end. You know how often when you're first kind of learning this stuff, you then kind of run out of air and then you lose. So trying to maintain that steadiness without getting to that point of
yeah. And so that's two things, right? One of them is maintaining that steadiness, and the other thing is conscious awareness of how long your air lasts you, and how much power you can generate on air, and what you can do at the end of the breath to make sure that you've still got the same amount of power, which I'll talk about in a minute. And it's all about muscle control, right? So your level of awareness increases when you're speaking or singing versus talking, because when we're talking, we just don't really think about our breath. We just breathe when we need the air, right? But for speaking, it's proactive. So we have to be aware of how much breath we're taking and how much we're exhaling, so that we can use it appropriately. And also the depth of our breath increases. When we are just breathing normally and talking, we breathe quite shallowly. Even if we're breathing like using our diaphragm and breathing functionally, not here, we still only take like little breaths. Remember that exercise we did in the breath awareness session where we took a shallow breath here and we took a shallow breath down here, like a small breath here versus a small breath here, and we got much more capacity out of the lower breath than we did of the high breath, right? It still was only a small amount of breath. So breathing diaphragmatically means you get more out of a small amount of air than if you were breathing here. But when we talk normally, we don't like stop and take these big diaphragmatic breaths and then keep talking, right? We just take a little breath in. So the depth of your breath increases hugely. We use about 5 to 10% of our lung capacity during any normal breath, and during controlled speech or singing, that jumps up to about 50%.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. And that's something to just take notice of, right? Like if you can, next time you're just having a chat with someone, allocate just a little portion of your consciousness to like, what kind of breaths am I taking? Are they deep? Are they shallow? You know, like, and you'll notice that every now and again you'll get really excited about something and you just talk, and then you go, because like you totally ran out of breath, right? But you're still in any normal breath, and even just at rest, if you just relax and let yourself breathe, they're not super big breaths, are they?
I think mine were because I was being really conscious of it, but yeah.
If you just like release all your use, I'll come back to you in a sec, Mike. If you just release all your useless tension, right? And don't think too much about your breath. Look around, look at the walls, and just let yourself breathe naturally. You'll recognize that your breathing is quite small. You know, it's not super deep. And by deep, I mean like in terms of lung capacity, not where are you taking your breath, right?
Yeah, it's not like you're gearing up to perform or say something. You kind of, it's just, a small movement.
Yes, small movements, right? Your ribs just little tiny movements. Yeah. So Mark, you were about to ask some question.
Because I was aware of the lung capacity thing, but then I had previously interpreted that as that you are aware that most people use only that much of their lung capacity on a day-to-day basis. and that was something to try and change even in your talking voice, like every day. But do you reckon it's purely you just don't need it? So it's something to have, like we were talking earlier with the different options. So having that capacity, but then only needing it when you need it, when you're speaking or something. So it's so splitting them up into those different things, like talking from speaking, because it makes sense. They're different. There's different purposes behind them. So.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. So yeah, you don't need to be using your full lung capacity all the time. In fact, it's really inefficient to use your full lung capacity all the time. Imagine if, like, every time you took a breath, and then you talked for a while, and you talked and talked and talked until your breath ran out, and then you kept talking and you kept talking. Like, I've still got loads of air in from that, like just that one single breath. I'm still going, and I don't sound like I'm losing capacity. I'm starting to now. I'm just starting to get towards the end of my breath now. I know I'm about to run out of breath, and now I need more air, right? But imagine if that's how you breathed all the time. It'd be weird. You know, you'd spend all of your time either really full or really empty, and like doing whatever you did in between. So those small, like 5 to 10% lung capacity breaths are all you need to just function on an everyday basis. If you suddenly exert yourself a bit more, either through speech or movement or surprise or emotional stuff or whatever, then your breath will increase, right? Like the depth of your breath will increase in response to that physical requirement. So I've got hiccups now. I'm playing with my breath and I've got hiccups. That's so funny. Breath geekery. Sorry about that. So yeah, you're like your brain responds to stimulus and increases the like breathing because it recognizes it needs more oxygen for a particular thing, right? But just normally, you just breathe the way you breathe. But the important thing there is shifting it from shoulder chest breath to belly breath or diaphragmatic breath.
So the practice is actually using your proper breath in terms of where it's coming from, but it doesn't have to be a ginormous breath in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
But you practice actually the proper use, and then that practice continues when you're using it to deliberately
speak or sing or something like that. Yes, absolutely. Okay, cool. So next thing. All right. Oh, I didn't realize I had forgot that. So posture. Tips for improving control. Posture is one of the things we're going to talk about, okay? So poor posture versus good posture versus poor posture, right? Like there's a bunch of different ways you can have shitty posture. Anytime you're not like well aligned, so from the top of your head, your shoulders should be basically over your hips, which should be basically over kind of like the middle of your feet, not your heels, not your toes. You want your weight to be balanced fairly deliberately in the middle, right? Why do you think that's important for breath control?
To have the right amount of space available, I think. As soon as you do something, I feel like everything collapses and you don't have as much space then. So you can't let the diaphragm do its thing.
There's also the fact that, like, so for instance, this one, can you see me moving my mouse? Yeah, cool. So this one, the tummy is pulled in, right? Like the tummy is kind of in. And is that helpful for a good in breath? Would you be able to use your tummy muscles well in this posture?
No, because it's like crushed.
Yeah, you can push them out, but it's hard work, right? What about this one?
Like it then forces up the top. Then you try, but then because you're doing that, you
can really only breathe here.
Yeah.
And what about? Where's my mouse? What about this one?
Forward head, sway back.
Which is sort of the opposite. Oh yeah, it's kind of already pushing out, so it's kind of you don't have the control to move it.
Yeah. So like get yourself in that posture, right?
Forward
And
head.
try and take a deep breath in. Got nothing, right?
Mm.
You just
Biggest
can't do
thing
it.
here, I find, because of the neck, you can't get that. It can't even get properly down into here, I find, because it's,
everything's all out of whack and in weird positions and stuff, right? So your posture is first and foremost the thing that you have to manage. Even if you know how to diaphragmatically breathe, and even if you know how to control your exhalations and all that kind of stuff, if your posture's shit, you're shutting down all opportunity to utilize those skills anyway, right? So anytime you want to exert control over your breath, have good posture to start with, okay? You want to release any useless tension that's floating around in your system, right? Because tension anywhere equals tension everywhere. I swear to God, I'm going to get a t-shirt made up.
Oh my God, I am writing that down. Tension anywhere means tension everywhere.
Yeah. Because of myofascial sheath, right? Because all of our muscles are essentially linked to one another through myofascial sheath, right? You can have tension in your left foot and it can impact your breath, and it can impact how free you are in your throat and how loose your jaw is.
Yeah, it's just insane when you start growing in awareness of stuff. Like when you are just walking down the street and then you suddenly go like, oh, why am I like holding my knee funny, or like holding my arm, or like, or when I get stressed, I lift my shoulders. And when I first started becoming aware of stuff, that realization that like I'm literally walking around like this was like, oh, like, right. Yeah. I think I've said that before, but I find that really fascinating.
Yeah, and it can be really useful. Like, so for instance, if you do have tension somewhere, like if you're like, oh, my knee is sore, rather than just going, there's something wrong with my knee, it can be really useful to run your consciousness out from your knee. What's it attached to? And actually it's attached to pretty much everything, but directly what's it attached to? And you can look for other areas of tightness in your body that sometimes you release that tightness and, oh, my knee doesn't hurt anymore. So I roll out the base of my feet with a lacrosse ball on a really, really regular basis, right? So like daily, if I can remember to do it. And what it does is make my lower back release all the time.
Yeah, I had a voice teacher in drama school, not Linda, a different one, who recommended that.
Yeah.
That was part of his like vocal warm-up, was you start by rolling.
Start with your feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, roll your feet out, because you've got I keep saying it wrong. Myofascial sheath. There we go, myofascial sheath. Perfect example of how that thing works, right? So you've got one that runs from the tips, from your toes, under your feet, up the backs of your thighs, up your back, all across here, and finishes here at your eyebrows. So it runs up the back of your neck, right? So tension in your feet translates directly to tension in your neck.
Crazy.
Yeah, so it makes sense that rolling out your feet would be a great way to make sure that your neck is loose and your head does feel like a ping pong ball on top of a column of water, you know? Okay, great. So releasing useless tension is super important as well. So you also want to warm up your vocal cords, because your vocal cords, the way we make sound is air passing through your vocal cords, right? So if your vocal cords are stiff, okay, you have to work harder to push the air through them to make the sounds that you want to make, right? Which decreases the control you have, because you're introducing a whole pile of extra force and tension. And we know by now that when we put force into something, it reduces flexibility and agility and movement and that kind of stuff. And warming up your vocal cords actually warms up everything else as well. So any vocal cord warm-ups you do, like hums and ahs and that kind of thing, you're using all of the muscles around your breath work anyway. You're warming up your intercostal muscles, you're warming up your like abdominal muscles, your back, your shoulders, your jaw, all of that kind of stuff. And all of those things help with maintaining good control. So warming up is like, this is another reason why having that warm up process be there is really, really useful for you. Diaphragmatic breathing, obviously, right? If you're not breathing diaphragmatically, you're not going to have good breath control. But all these other things have to come first. So having diaphragmatic breathing available to you without being warm, without having good posture, and with tension in your body is not going to be beneficial to you anyway. You won't be able to gain the full benefit of diaphragmatic breathing if these other things are in the way. Yeah. And then the other thing that you need to be able to do is engage the correct muscles. So a big part of control of exhalation is your abdominal muscles. So you have to be connected to them. And one way to connect to them is to pant. Right? Can you feel that?
Yeah.
Right? So you can feel the muscles that work and you can do it gently. You slow it right down. And if you've got your hands on your belly while you're doing it, you can really feel all the individual muscles contribute to the outcome, right? And then gradually speed up. And see how fast you can go.
I find that I as I get faster, I get tempted to build it higher.
Yes.
So I get tempted to do like,
Right? And that is just one big tension in your, like if you do that from here. So put one hand here and one hand on your belly. One hand on your belly. And if you breathe, if you pant fast from here, and feel your tummy. Is there much movement in it?
No.
Not much, right? Mostly what your tummy is doing is just contracting.
Trying to like hold you, yeah.
Yeah, and this is where you're doing all the pushing from. But if you pant from here, and gradually build the speed up, you don't move here, this keeps moving, and it gets faster and faster and faster, but it doesn't just lock.
I felt before the slower I went and smaller, the lower abdominal muscles I could feel more, which was surprising because you'd think the more effort you have to put in, it would engage with more of them. But it was interesting that it was almost a more hyper aware of those other.
So why do you, tell me why you think, I'll give you the answer in a second, but why do you think that is the case? Why, when you pant slower, do you feel more engagement of muscles?
I feel like it's something to do with the diaphragm, and maybe it's dropping more because it's slower and it's deeper, maybe.
So it's because when you pant slower, you pant longer. So there's a bigger push of air. It's gentler. It's not like boom, 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 right? It's gentler, but it's longer. So it requires more muscle control to have the pant last for that long.
Okay.
When we just go, those lower muscles still engage, right? And if you do it hard, like that, you'll really, with your hands like low down on your belly and higher up where your diaphragm is, right? So I'm like cupping my lower belly here and I've got my hands on my diaphragm here, right? And I'm going, so I'm really forcing the air out. You'll feel those lower muscles work. And if you're not feeling them yet, it's just because you're not connected to them with your breath.
And so what are you doing there? You're doing like a breath out thing.
Yeah, a forced exhalation as hard as I can.
Okay.
And do you want the lower part of your body to go out as you exhale or in as you exhale?
In. Because inhalation is belly out, exhalation is belly in. So to force that air out, your stomach muscles have to contract.
I just feel like I can make the lower one go out at the same time as the higher one go in.
Yeah, that is a thing, right? Like you absolutely can relax.
Or I can do it the other
muscles.
way.
But yeah, but what you're doing is you're not using the muscles in the breath, you're controlling the muscles and then you're doing the breath.
Right.
Right? So you're relaxing those bottom muscles and you're telling those muscles you don't have to do any work here, and then you're just using the upper abdominal muscles, right? To do the breath. I actually find that hard because I'm pretty like connected to using all of those muscles for breathing, right? Might be different for you because you've got different processes in place for singing. Don't know.
Yeah,
right?
and flute.
Yeah.
I was just thinking there's an exercise with vibrato, which is sort of similar to this. And you do like super slow, like as you're doing it. And so I'm like, oh yeah, all right, trying to link that in. Anyway. Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, when you're like all of the muscles, like you use your pelvic floor when you're breathing well. Like a really strong exhalation. Like I'm squeezing from the bottom up.
Yeah.
So this is just something to play with, right? Like when you're sitting in the car, driving somewhere, like practice like using different muscles to engage your breath and use your breath well.
Interesting.
All right. But you can't engage the correct muscles until you're aware of them. So you have to build that awareness and connect your breath to those muscles. And if you've been breathing up here for a really long time, those muscles, the neuromuscular pathways are pretty like overgrown and not very well established at all because they just haven't been used very much. So it can take some time to generate that reconnection. And it's just about sticking your mind down there. Like put your awareness down there when you're breathing. Yeah? Okay.
I have a question after we've finished this bit that I want to just ask about.
Okay.
If you have a mic and in radio context, if that's...
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Okay. So the other thing is around improving control is you have to breathe proactively. You have to choose when to breathe, not just breathe because you need to.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about a couple of exercises that you can do to increase your breath control, increase your awareness of breath control and all of that kind of stuff. Now, the idea with this hissing exercise is to monitor your breathing and ensure that you can last through long phrases. It helps you be economical with your breathing because it increases your awareness of how long your breath can last for, right? You want to make sure that your hiss is consistent, that it's not louder at the beginning than the end or louder at the end than the beginning. And you're aiming for a smooth, even sound. Okay? So when we're doing this, the first step, the easiest one is breathe in for a count of 4 and then hiss out for a count of 4. Okay? But before we do that, I want you to just take a breath in for a count of 4 and then breathe out for a count of 4 and just get familiar with that feeling. All right?
In through nose, out through mouth?
Whatever.
Okay.
I always breathe through my mouth when I'm doing any of this kind of stuff because for voiceover, you've got to breathe through your mouth all the time anyway.
Even in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you breathe in through your nose, you then have to open your mouth and put all of your articulatory processes and bits and pieces in place so that you can make the sound. But if your mouth is open, it's already ready to go.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like if you're running stuff out to your car. You don't shut the door between trips.
Depends.
Well, you know, if it's raining or some shit, right? Whatever, you know. But if you've got shopping in the car, right, and you're bringing it inside, and you've got to do 3 or 4 trips in from the car, you don't close and lock the door every time you go in and out of it.
Mm.
You leave the door open so you can get in and out nice and quickly.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that analogy. This is great. I'm picturing someone then coming in and stealing the car. Right?
Yeah. All the rest of your shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah. My car sits on my driveway, which is right down the back of the property. So, but funnily, once upon a time, we had the car started. It was warming up in the driveway, halfway down the driveway, which is, you know, like probably 5 meters, 6 meters down the driveway, right? And someone came and got in the car and tried to steal it. Like the only reason they couldn't do it is because they couldn't work out reverse. Well, we walked out and there's this chick in our car.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
She just get out then? Give up?
Yeah, she got out and we took lots of photos and we like chased her down the street taking photos and reported to the police and they knew who she was. Apparently she does it all the time. Anyway, so that's the thing. Apparently someone's stealing your car out of your driveway. My
Right.
word.
And henceforth we shall all be closing our doors when we are bringing in our shopping. But not our mouths. But not our mouths.
I actually meant the door of the house as opposed to the door of the car. But it's the same thing, right? You don't want to like take some things out of the car, close the boot, open your door, put things on your bench. Oh, sorry, close the door, put things on your bench, open your door, walk back out, open your car, get another bag out, close the door, walk up to your door, open your door. You know, like that's just, it's a really inefficient process. So this is the same. Have your door open. So breathe in for a count of 4, breathe out for a count of 4. Just feel how the air moves and what you need to do with your body to make sure the out breath is the same number of counts as the in breath. Okay. Do you need to exert control to get the out breath to be 4?
Yes.
You do, right? Because normally our out breath is a bit longer than our in breath, right? A bit, right? A regular breathing pattern is like maybe in for 4, out for 6 or 7 or something like that when we're in a relaxed state, okay? When we are speaking or singing, the exhalation becomes even longer. So now you know to breathe in for 4 and out for 4, you have to exert some control over the exhalation so that the counts match, right? Now I want you to add a hiss in, right? So
Still 4 on out, sorry.
Yep. Still 4. So 4 in, 4 out, same count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And you want that hiss.
Become conscious of that, isn't it? To hear the sound with it too. Because I go, oh, right, it is much more of a conscious exhalation and control over it.
Yeah, yeah. And did you have to work, what was the muscular response like? Was it different to when you were just letting air out?
I feel like the muscles, the abdominal muscles began the exhalation rather than
it's all about the exhalation.
Wanting to exhale. Well,
yeah.
Yeah, it was. It didn't feel. Yeah, it did feel forced, but not in a uncomfortable way. I suppose just in
no, you just have to exert force, right? You're using your stomach muscles to close down your chest cavity and push the air out, right?
Yeah.
It's a controlled exhalation. And you control it via your abdominal muscles.
And in this, you want the tummy to move through, right? So you breathe in, and then as you're releasing, you want your tummy to move.
Yeah. And the amount of control you exert over the muscular movement determines how hard or fast or slow and long the air comes out of your mouth. When you introduce sound, it changes the way that you have to use your muscles. So you have to use your muscles to control that exhalation without sound, 1, 2, 3, 4 in, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 out. If you just let the air come out by itself, it'll take longer than 4 counts to come out of you, because that's just the way our body works, right? But if you want it to come out to a particular count, you have to exert control and you use your tummy muscles to do that. And then when you add sound, which is what a hiss is, you're adding an S sound, right? A sibilant to it. You can do it on an ah as well. So try it on an ah. Count in, like 4 count in, 4 count out on an ah. And keep the ah steady, consistent.
I feel like I so could have done more than that. It was like I just stopped after 4, but still had breath. So.
Yes, yeah. So for me, when you first start doing this exercise, don't worry about, do I still have breath left, right? But the extended version of this exercise is like getting to the end of your breath in that time frame.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you first start doing it, right, that's me stopping my breath, right? But if I want to use all of that breath from that 4 count inhalation, I have to really clamp down with my stomach muscles and push the air out. So just try that. Okay, good. Can you guys hear how the hiss changes like volume as so the goal is to understand how much control to apply to get it to come out of you evenly. So the hiss doesn't change its shape or volume or anything like that across that 4 count. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, right? That sounded pretty consistent, and that was in time, right? If I didn't do that properly, this is what it would sound like. Hear how I had to push hard in the last 2 count to get it to come out? So it got louder.
Yeah.
Right? So what you're aiming for is a consistent hiss.
Sorry, that's my doorbell. One moment.
So then, as you can see from here, you can change the numbers. You can change the counts. So breathe in for 6, hiss out for 10, or ah, or whatever, right? So does that make sense?
Sorry, my internet cut out and I just disappeared.
You did freeze. Cool, cool, cool. I wasn't sure if you were just like watching intently or if you were frozen. Cool. So breathing in for 6 and then hissing or ah for 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. Did you hear how it had to get stronger at the end so that you could get rid of all of your breath?
I was aware I had it there, and so I'm like,
shove it out. Yeah. So
behind.
go again now immediately and adjust the strength of the hiss at the start so that it's even all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Which one are we doing now?
6 and 10.
6 and 10.
Yeah, no. I still had, I was like, okay, I need to put a lot more behind it.
Okay, good. So Emily, same thing for you. Did you hear how the hiss got stronger at the end? Because you're like, oh, I've got some air left. I'll push it all out so that I get to the 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
So now what you need to do is make an adjustment at the front end. So you start the hiss a little stronger.
Yeah.
So that by the end of it, you're at the end of your breath.
Okay. Wait, breathe in for 6, not just breathe in. I was like, okay, I'm prepping for 10. Here we go. Yeah, okay.
How was that?
I only just got it because I started quite strong, but I think I managed to maintain it.
Cool. So while you're doing this, you want to make sure you're not holding too much tension here. All right. So Emily, when you did that, then you were like,
yeah, I was like, focus, must breathe, count. Yeah.
So loosen off, right? Remember, the basis for all of this is no useless tension in your body, good posture.
I think I need to stand up.
Yeah, go for it. Okay. So,
excuse my gym comments.
No, that's fine. One more go of this, and then we're going to move on to the next exercise because we're getting close to 11. How was that?
Yeah.
Good.
Good. I had to I was going to say force myself to relax is the wrong use of words, but
remind yourself.
Really, make sure that I was loose.
Soft and loose. Yeah. Where are you at with this, Mark? How are you feeling about it? Is this something that you feel like you need lots of practice in?
Probably more the even of the breath part, because a lot of my normal practice is doing a lot of this, but I've never been told to make it even. It's kind of just practicing exhaling on different counts, I suppose, and different capacities, but not having it even.
But if you think about it, right, exhaling on a 4 count versus a 6 count and having breath left on the 4 count makes it basically the same as a 6 count.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, really just then spitting it all out at the end.
You're just like, right? or you go until you stop, until you finish counting, and then you just stop, but you've still got all this breath left, right? So that's not really, that's like maintaining even sound, right? But it's not understanding what your lung capacity is and how you can apply that. And for me, breath control in voiceover is not just about, I can make myself sound good. It's how much breath do I need? Because ultimately what we're looking at, if we want to breathe proactively, we have to know what our lung capacity is individually, right? Because it's different for everyone. What is my lung capacity? What do I have to do? What kind of physical activity do I have to engage in to get that far with this much breath, right? So I'm looking at a sentence. I know that I've got this much sentence to say, or it's a short sentence, but has to be really powerful. How much breath do I need? Knowing that I want to finish it tidily at that point. And you don't have to run out of breath at the end of every sentence. That's not the goal here, right? But getting yourself to that point is what has you understand, well, this is how much at this level of force, this breath lasts for this long.
Yeah. And it's, for me, I'm interested in the slow inhale. I think that was what I was finding more difficult, because I'm used to flute or singing or going, I've got to take in this.
Yeah.
To then, I'm looking at your list here, and I feel like the in for 1, out for 20 is going to be easier for me, because I'm used to, my mind is used to going, you need this much air for this long.
Yes.
Whereas when I was breathing in for 6, I was like, I don't know, it's like this weird slow motion thing.
Yeah.
I don't have control over that.
Yeah, good. Well. Cool. That's awesome. That's excellent. Part of this is working out, where do I not have control? Right. And then how do I build control there? That's fun. And you can switch those around as much as you like. You can go in for 10, out for 2. That's really interesting. Watch. So that was in for 10, out for 2. Not on a sound, just on a breath, right?
Yeah.
And what muscular control do you have to exert to get all the air to come out in that amount of time, right? And what that starts to speak to is, how do I project effectively? Lots of people think projection is they feel like projection has to come from here, but actually projection comes from the ability to contract and push air out hard. And that's where you generate your energy from, for your really energized reads as well. That comes from the same place. Yeah?
what Emma was saying just before about the in-breaths, at first I went, oh yeah, no, I don't think that's where I need to put mine's more the breath up. But then, because I was saying I was doing a bit of community radio recently, what the trainer person picked up one particular time, I don't think it's a consistent thing, but he could hear these big gasps for air at points. And at first I was a bit like, oh, well, this is community radio and you just don't understand breathing. I was just, breathing diaphragmatically. And then I was like, hang on, okay. And then once he made me aware of it, I heard myself do it with my headphones. I went, I don't need that much breath, or it doesn't need that quickly either.
Yeah.
So it might even be me practicing that gradual, because sometimes there are times where you can have that time. You don't need to.
Totally.
It's as if I always think I just always need to have the breath there in case I need it. So practicing all different variants of the exhalation, but the in-breath always needs to be the snap breath. So I've got it back there just in case. But then not having that audible all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be really, really helpful to be able to breathe inaudibly. Right? And that's muscular control as well. So you can just open your mouth and broaden your ribs. Like use your intercostal muscles, use the muscles in your back to open the doors of your ribs this way. Air just flows in.
Just doing that, I think the sound that I hear when I'm taking those deep breaths is still me slightly linked with chest breathing.
100%. It's you mechanically breathing.
Yeah. Rather than...
And that's here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is here. But... So if I just open here, you can't, there's no sound. Can you feel that?
Yeah, and it's much calmer too.
Oh, so much more.
Present.
Your brain stays calm because when you breathe here, like that, your brain thinks you're panicking. And so it dumps cortisol and adrenaline into your system. And then you get half as smart straight away because cortisol lowers your IQ in about 7 seconds by about 50%. Right? It literally makes you stupid. So you lose the ability to be rational and think clearly and use your cognitive capabilities, right? So that kind of breathing, that expansion of ribs instead of sucking air into here through your mouth using all of these muscles, right? That's panic, like it's shock, But
I was doing both, so I think it was purely that transition period of never going that next step of letting go of this entirely.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Just keep playing with that,
Yeah.
So here's another exercise for you, just quickly. It's called snatched breaths. And you basically think of your lungs filling up in fractions while you count, okay? So you focus on the diaphragm, don't hold any tension in your neck and your shoulders, just like every other type of breathing exercise, right? And you will find when you're learning when you're playing with these, every now and again, you'll get really tight here because you're trying really hard to get it right? And so you have to let go, turn into a loosey-goosey jelly person, right? Just do what you need to do to let go of all of the tension that's there. So the two versions that are here are you use a count of 4 to breathe in fully, but you don't breathe evenly over that 4. You go...
Oh.
Right. And what that does is start to teach you how to use your muscles to open up in percentages or fractions. Right.
So just to clarify, you were taking in, the quarter full on 1 and then 2 is,
Yeah.
I think that's similar to, which I never understood why. I learned it from one of my old voice teachers, but he often didn't explain.
Just do this.
I don't want you to get in your head, but I feel perhaps maybe at one stage, but then I feel then you do need to understand what is going on.
Mm.
Because what I would do, and what I do regularly, is I would say breathe in 6 units of 7 in and 6 units of 7 out. So it'd be doing little snap sevens. But say like what you said on the one, a quarter, I suppose you would breathe in a quarter, but you might do tiny little breaths within that and do 7
Yeah.
and 7.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's incremental, right? So
probably engaging with the diaphragm, going like, and as if, but it still had to be smooth, not just. It was,
right. Yeah, gotcha. Well, I guess what that is teaching you to start down low and fill your lungs up, rather than starting up high and trying to fill your lungs up here. Because if you breathe here, it's really hard to then drop your breath down lower. You sort of can't do it. Like if you go and then try to take in more breath down low, it just doesn't work.
No.
You have to let the breath out so that the muscles relax so that they can work properly, right? So breathing in little bits but smoothly teaches you how to start down low, I think, right? And when we did the breath awareness session, do you remember we broke our breath into 3 sections? We like lower part of the lungs, middle part of the lungs, upper part of the lungs. Well, this is like that, except you can think about there being 4 parts if you want, or 10 parts, or 3 parts, or 2 parts, which is what version B is, right? So like you're aiming for a full breath. You're aiming to start at the bottom and fill all the way to the top, right? But you're doing it in sections, in fractions, okay? So for a 2 count, so on the count of 1, you breathe halfway. And then on 2, you fill all the rest of it up, and then you breathe out gradually and slowly till 12. Those numbers are wrong, by the way. It should be 3, 4, 5, 6, blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so in this, with the numbers, I was going to ask, do you want that kind of evenness of the count? Like 1, 2, and then out, 2, 3. It's not like breathe in, and then smooth out.
No, like I think you want the count to be consistent.
Yeah, okay. Cool.
So have a go of that. See how it feels. And we're not, like, you can do it smoothly, like, but it's hard. It's actually, it gives you better like awareness if you do it separately. So, I'll do this in 4. So all right, so I went 4 in and then 5, 6, same pace, right? Out to 12. And I had to exert control with my stomach muscles and my core muscles to get the breath to last to 12.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was like a hold in between, I think.
Only because you're conscious of, on the breath out, no holds.
No,
right?
yeah.
And there sort of is on the way in, but only so that you can distinguish between the volumes that you're pulling in to get the full breath.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So what this does is it gives you the capacity to go, it helps you start to understand, like, if I just go, how much of my lung capacity can I utilize, right? Like if I've got no breath, that first little breath in is deep and low. And then with that breath, if I want to, I can add more to it, right? And then I can talk a bit. And then if I want to, I can add a bit more to it. And there's going to be times when you're reading voiceover that you read some stuff and you know, because you understand proactive breathing, that you're going to need more air than you currently have, but you don't necessarily need to fill all the way up. You might just take a snatched breath.
Yeah.
So you might only fill another quarter of your lungs. Or if you know you're going to need quite a bit, you might like take half a lung's worth of snatched breath. But it doesn't have to be noisy because you're using your abdominal muscles and your diaphragm and stuff correctly to get that extra bit of breath in. It's noisy when you just suck it into here.
Just to clarify with the exhaling, say of version A, do you pretty much just mean breathing out on 8 counts, like with the 5 to 12 there?
Yeah.
It's purely going on the 4, but you're just continuing it from 5 to 12 rather than just saying breathe out on 8. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah. Because 1, 2 in, 3, 4 through to 12 out.
Mm-hmm.
So you could separate them, but the reason they're joined up like that is because it's all still one breath. You don't want to separate your inhalation and your exhalation in your head.
Yeah.
But just play, right? Ultimately, play.
Random question, more like what actually happens with your diaphragm. I feel like I remember hearing something and just never, I don't know if it's true or even, I don't remember where this is coming from. Anyway, does your diaphragm, once say you have your inhale, once you inhale, does something have to happen with your diaphragm before it can come back up again? Like, is there some kind of physical thing that
your stomach muscles need to relax? But that's it.
Maybe that's what I remember hearing, of something about letting them contract.
So if you push your stomach muscles out, right? If you push your stomach muscles out on an in-breath, like take an in-breath, push your stomach muscles out, keep them pushed out, and then try and exhale.
Yeah, it does.
It's hard, right?
Properly.
Yeah.
That must have been all that. I feel like that little comment was there, and now allow something to do with this, and then before you exhale. And I think it was purely just relaxing those to allow the diaphragm to then come back up and let the air go out. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I don't find that difficult.
Breathing out while your tummy muscles are pushed all the way out.
I find that I can. Hang on.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that you can't do it, but it's easier. It's more natural. It happens without you having to exert control over the exhalation. If you just relax your tummy muscles.
I feel, which is why I asked that thing about it moving through, because I feel like I kind of want to engage those muscles.
Like when? What do you mean?
For exhale.
Well, you do engage them, but you engage them on a inward movement, not an outward movement.
Yeah, okay.
I found when I didn't do it, so when I kept them out and breathing out, not using those, I started trying to use muscles up here and in my neck, trying to force it to help it out still.
Yeah.
Not on a...
Because the way to get the air out of your lungs is to have them deflate by your ribs moving in and the space in your rib, like your chest cavity, getting smaller.
Yeah.
So if your belly's pushed out and your diaphragm can't like properly do what it's doing, your belly pushed out, by the way, keeps your ribs out as well. Right? So it's not just your diaphragm, it's your ribs too. So when you push your belly out and your ribs open like this, right? If your belly stays out, your ribs are trying to like go back in at the bottom, but the muscles of your belly are keeping them held out and open, right? So you have to like try and make the space smaller with muscles up here instead.
Definitely felt that.
So what is it that's supporting the breath?
What do you mean?
Or is it your breath that's supporting the voice?
Your breath supports your voice.
I was just thinking about the terminology of support. When you're speaking, you're using those muscles
to generate airflow.
Yeah. Cool.
That's what those muscles do, right? They generate airflow. They do other things as well. But from a breathing perspective, those muscles, like So your muscles, your belly pushing out, and your intercostal muscles, like bringing your ribs out and that kind of stuff, that allows air to flow in because it creates space, right? And then your tummy muscles, like when you're just breathing normally, like naturally, your tummy muscles don't have a lot to do with inhalation. They mostly work on exhalation, but that's why we've been talking about them lots today, because breath control happens mostly on the exhalation for speaking, because it's on exhalation that we make noise mostly. I mean, we can sort of make noises breathing in, but it's hard, right? Like mostly we make noise on exhalation. So your tummy muscles are what generate exhalation. Your diaphragm contracting is what generates inhalation. But we can't make our diaphragm, consciously make our diaphragm contract and relax.
No, yeah.
We have no connection to it. It has no proprioception cells. So if we're going to control the breath mechanism, we have to control the other muscles that are available to us. Which are the ones around our ribs and in our core.
Which makes sense. I'm thinking again about why I was making noise inhaling. But I think another thing is that in the station there's this one of those big office chairs which are supposedly ergonomic, but you just get lost in them. They stuff up your posture. And so I'm in this chair like that. So I'm like this. So then it just comes back to posture then, and not having the space to allow any of the muscles to do what they need to do. So then that is creating this noise, because it's like
you have to suck in, right? You've got to give your lungs the opportunity. You've got to give your lungs the opportunity to expand by creating the chance for your chest to move. You know? Yeah. Change your chair. Don't use the shitty chair.
Totally.
You're better off sitting on a stool, you know?
That's what I'm going to take, just even though it's 2 hours, but just something with a bit of padding, but just that keeps me upright.
Yeah. And doesn't encourage that kind of slump or that forward sort of thing or whatever. Lots of radio people stand up. It's easier to stand. You can be more expressive when you're standing, and you can use your arms and you can use your body a lot more. And that's why I don't sit down for voiceover ever. The only time I've ever sat down for voiceover was when I was doing quite a bit of messages on hold for HBF, and there was a stool, but I perched on the edge of it, right? I really just took the weight off my feet. Like my butt was just on the edge of the stool, right? And I was still like using my upper body like I was standing up.
That's how it was for the museum. I initially was like, no, I want to stand up. And then I'm like, okay, it's hours long. So I need to sit. But I always found myself sitting forward, because it was always the best, or when we were able to move on, when I was able to use my hands and be expressive. And yeah, so my little setup in my front room for voiceover, I've not even put a chair.
Yeah. I'll never have a chair in a voiceover space for me at home, ever.
My voiceover bit, but I think with the radio, I have to operate the songs and the computer and that. And there's
so it's different.
I have to sit, but the voiceover, I definitely would.
Yeah. All right, guys, I got to go.
Cool.
Lovely.
That was awesome. Any last questions before we wrap up?
No, I just learned a lot. It was really great.
Good. Excellent. There are, by the way, gazillions of breath control exercises on the internet, right? Breathing through a straw, like all sorts of different stuff. There's so much stuff out there. The exercises I showed you are ones that I just know are good, right? But there's a million others. Linda will have a gazillion of them as well.
Yeah.
So the exercises that I showed you are by no means like
the way.
Yeah. Or the way, right?
Yeah.
But I think the really important part is, you know, Mark, like you were saying, you had a teacher who taught you some exercises but didn't give you the information behind it. And like, honestly, I think understanding why you're doing a thing, not only does it give you better access to like how you should be doing it, but it allows you to manipulate that thing and try different stuff with it, because you understand why you're doing it and what its purpose is. And okay, so inside of that construct, what happens if I do it this way? How does that change things? And then you know what the change is and how, like, what you've done to implement that change. And that is just what grows your awareness and grows your understanding. And control always comes with greater understanding. You know, so that was my goal today, to give you a bit more understanding of why you want to control your breath and some of the ways that you can do it, but what the mechanisms behind it are. So did we tick those boxes today?
We did.
We did. I feel like, you know, when you see those like inspirational quotes, sometimes you post them, like that kindness one the other day.
Yeah.
There's like, you could make yourself like a bunch of little things like that to post on your Instagram. Because I'm like, slowly through these classes, I'm like randomly taking a note where I like put it in a big box.
Yeah, cool. Can you send me all of those? Because I say stuff sometimes, I'm like, well, sure, I should remember that.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, control comes with understanding. Wow, that's going in a box. Tension anywhere means tension everywhere. And there was one the other day. Oh, here we go. The freedom to create comes inside of structure. And I was like, epically like, and then underneath, push into the weird. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's my favorite too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can you send me them?
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Just stick them in an email and send them to me. Because, yeah, look, I think that's good. I'm glad you're taking notes like that. That's excellent. I kept thinking I need to go back through all of the things I've ever taught and like watch them and just pull out the bits that like I can put into, because I do wind up repeating those things. Like that structure thing I repeat all the time, and the tension thing I repeat all the time. But I haven't been writing them down.
But as you know, I tend to say things in about 5,000 words. And what I'm loving about the way that you teach is you go like, bam, here it is in a beautifully structured sentence that explains everything you need to do without the 5 million extra explanations that Emily would have done if she was teaching this class. So
do you know, that's really interesting. That's good. I'm really glad it's working well for you. That's excellent. I think and I've been thinking about that a bit lately, right? Because it's not the first time you've mentioned that, right? Which is really, really awesome. And I think where it comes from is from thinking deeply about all of this kind of stuff, but also having a really well-rounded vocabulary, which is incredibly important for voiceover or speaking of any kind, right? The more clearly you can articulate your ideas, the better the understanding comes on the other end, right? And our whole goal is to generate really good understanding at the other end. So having really great control over your capacity to speak, so your breath, and understanding that pausing and going slow doesn't like make you look like you're an idiot, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Understanding that, but also having a really good grasp of language is very, very important. Helps enormously with interpretation of copy as well.
Yeah, and I feel like I do have, like I read a lot and I feel like I have a good-ish vocabulary and that. But I also know that my way of being creative or coming up with ideas, but also with understanding, is often to talk it out.
Yeah.
So like I'll go like, blah, 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 blah. Oh, I'm going to take that, blah, 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 take that, like.
Well, I've done that, right? So like I've talked it out a bunch of times. That's why I can get a little bit more like sound bitey with the way that I say things now.
I mean, I guess if I was like, when I'm teaching flute to little ones, I don't talk at them for 5 years. I am more concise there.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm just particularly enjoying that kind of like, I feel like you can copyright all the, you know, that's what it's reminding me of like, you know, those
Deannerisms.
Oh, there you go. Deannerisms. Okay.
Now put a box around it.
Well, I just put a box around. The more clearly you can articulate your ideas, the more understanding the other end. So,
yeah, good. Well, I'm super, super glad that, I mean, that's one of my favorite things about learning as well, hearing people frame things and going, oh, like I posted something on my Facebook, Instagram, maybe yesterday or something like that, or the day before. You will never be criticized by someone who is doing more than you. You will only be criticized by someone doing less.
Yeah, I saw that. That's great.
And I was just like, well, you know, and I get that concept. Like I understand that people who criticize you generally are like just kind of trying to pull you back to where they are and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't ever consider that the people who are doing more than me, they're too busy to be like walking around criticizing people. Like I don't criticize people that are like, I don't criticize people that are coming up behind me, because like either I'm busy focusing on my shit or I want to help, right? And the people that do criticize, I got criticized heavily by somebody just recently, someone who just like, ooh, went to town on me. It was very interesting. My first hater, right?
Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was a little bit sucky, but here's the thing. This person sits on their ass and does nothing.
Yeah. That's
They
right.
just complain about other people doing things, you know.
Yeah.
And when I read this, I went, oh, yes, right? Yes.
Isn't there someone that talks about that too? I feel like I've read recently about, or maybe I heard it in a podcast about the whole thing of, you know, if they're out there fighting too, then they have then you can have a conversation about it. Whereas if they're just sitting and watching.
That one about being in the arena or something.
In the arena, yeah.
Who is it? It's Brene Brown quotes it a lot.
It must have been that because I listened to one of her.
About being in the arena. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Just Google it. Google Brene Brown arena. It'll show up if she quotes it all the time. Yeah, awesome. All right, guys, lovely to spend time with. Honestly, I could just sit here and talk to you all day, to be honest.
Same. Yeah, really great though. Thank you. And thank you for giving me room to do that though. Like, especially at the start of this session, I found that really useful, being able to kind of talk that out. So thank you.
My pleasure. No worries. No worries. It's just, it's just a joy hanging out with you guys. I'm loving it. It's really great.
Me too.
All right. Have a lovely day.
Okay, you too. Bye.
See you, peeps.
See you, Mark.
Bye.